Hi, I'm Judy Richards, and I'd like to welcome Denise Boles, Republican candidate for House District 19. Welcome, Denise.
Thanks, Judy. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Tell us at least 3 of your positions on what would encourage a senior or a person with disabilities to vote for you.
All right. Well, I have to tell you, this comes really naturally to me. I've been kind of the advocate in my family for both seniors, and my brother has a disability as well, and his wife. And so I've grown up in a community that looks out for, I think, our most vulnerable, and I think it's seniors, people with disabilities, and our children. And so I've been an advocate my whole life, so one of the things that you can count on me here is to continue to advocate for the people in my community that need that. Things like Project Independence, which I know we're going to talk a little bit more about, pocketbook issues as far as things that we're voting for in the House that would affect people on fixed incomes, and looking at things like with regards to transportation and all that, but making sure that we are doing really positive things with the money that we're given and being careful with that, because anytime we add to our budget, lots of times it trickles down and it affects our seniors in a disproportionate level. So you can count on me to continue the advocacy of my life into the House, into the legislature for the people in my community.
Well, thank you for that. Oregon Project Independence is a program that kept seniors and people with disabilities in their own home, and yet every year proposed funding for OPI is significantly cut. What will you do to ensure and protect funding for this cost-effective program?
Oregon Project Independence, I think, is one of the best things we do in this state. I come from an extraordinarily independent group of people. In fact, my grandmother lived in southeast Portland by herself in the house that she raised my mom until she was 93 years old. And not just because she just her independent nature, but it allows, I think Oregon Project Independence allows people to keep the dignity, keep their ability to make decisions for themselves. And as you get older, it's already frustrating, I imagine, to be dealing with so many other issues and then to have people starting to take those decision-making abilities away from you. So in Oregon, I know we have an issue just because it's all general fund money, and so it becomes part of this political badminton that we play at the end of the session. But I will be one of your strongest advocates in that building, because I have seen the benefit of this personally, and as well as the people in my community.
Thank you. What will you do on a state level so that seniors and people with disabilities no longer face a lack of accessible and affordable housing?
You know, that is becoming kind of the big conversation as a community here in Oregon about housing and affordability across the spectrum. I believe that seniors and people with disabilities should be prioritized in that conversation. And we also need to make sure that we're building housing that is appropriate for for accessibility. And so all of those things need to be a stronger part of the conversation that we're having here. And I would be, again, I'm very common sense and practical about everything that I approach. So I bring that kind of perspective in these policy decisions, as far as, okay, how are we going to get here? Is this appropriate for someone who is in a wheelchair, or someone who, whether through a disability or through age? And we need to be a little bit more forward thinking in that when we're building the affordable housing, as well as prioritizing people that need it the most.
Oh, you're right about that. How would you prioritize state funding, including funding that is matched with federal funds for services to an increasing senior and people with disability population?
You know, we in this community, we're having an exponential growth over the next 10 years of people moving in here that are from other parts of, parts of the country, because we have such a great place to live. And so I know there's a lot of community conversations in order to make sure that we can meet the needs of an aging population. So I think back to kind of at the beginning, the priorities that we have a societal responsibility to our aging and disabilities, and we need to make sure that that is reflected in our policies and in our budgeting process. So it's a battle, but it is one that I think is worth having, because these are the people that we're kind of coming behind, and there's a responsibility, I think, as both as a family, as a community, and a government to take care of. So it would be a real high priority for me.
Oh, thank you. How will your experience shape the work you will do on behalf of seniors and people with disabilities?
You know, I've spent a lot of time, my family had an adult foster care home growing up, and so, and ironically, both of my parents were only children, so I thought everybody's aunts and uncles were 80 years old, and I really did. That's what I grew up with, and so it is, and then my brother has had a disability from the time he was about 1.5 years old through some things, and so we've constantly been, as a family, talking about issues. You know, how do we, get your independence? How do we do this? So it's really personal for me. I mean, I have some professional experience as well, working for the hospital and such, but personally, I've walked through a lot of really hard situations, and as I mentioned before, we're a pretty independent crew, and so my first nature is to, how can you have as much control and opinion about what's happening that's appropriate to your level of need. So I would just bring a lot of that into this, into my role here at the legislature. I already have, and I will continue to do so.
Oh, thank you, Denise.
Thank you.
This is Denise Boles, Republican candidate for House District 19. Thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.